Awesome. Welcome everyone to the Plan A office. It's really, really nice to see everyone here. Welcome to everyone in the office, but also welcome to everyone who's joining online. It's really, really cool to have like a cool setup for this. I know we put a lot of work into it, so hopefully it works. I'm Oliver. I manage the engineering teams at Plan A. I've been at Plan A now for just over 4 years. No, almost 4 years. Yeah, I'm really, really happy to introduce the Green Tech Connect, the first Green Tech Connect. At Plan A, we're really, really passionate about sustainability. Everyone who joins Plan A wants to make a difference, wants to work out how they can make an impact to the problem of climate change. And everyone really shares this drive and this motivator. The other thing we have is a passion for software. And passion for using software to solve problems, particularly interesting problems. And so it's really, really cool that Marco has brought us together today to talk about this. How can we use software to solve this problem of climate change? I guess actually the first thing to do is to give Marco a little round of applause for bringing us all here. Thanks, Marco. Cool. So a bit of housekeeping. The talk today will be around an hour. Is that rough? Half an hour. Okay, great. Half an hour with QA. Okay, great. We'll have some time at the end for questions. So please think of some questions. There'll be some really interesting topics. So hopefully we get some good feedback on those. There's food and drink at the back in the kitchen. You can see the kitchen over there for people in the office. And feel free to stick around after the talk for chats and just to get to know each other. And we'll finish up at 9 at the latest. I specifically was told 9 at the latest.
Sorry.
No later. Most importantly, the toilets are on the left of the kitchen there. Yeah, I think the last thing to do is just to introduce the speaker. So I think Carsten doesn't really need an introduction. Definitely not from anyone in this room, but probably not even for people joining externally. This is actually his second speaking engagement today. He's super passionate and super knowledgeable about the sustainability topic and also the sustainable IT topic. And I think we're really privileged to have him here today to talk about it. So thank you so much, Carsten. Hand over to you.
All right, just need to adjust my microphone. Give me a second. Okay, so I hope that works. Lesson 1 learned, we need more microphones. I hope you can all hear me well. If not, please write it in the chat. I will now share my screen here. So this should hopefully work. So I'm not sure. Can you see the slides? Okay, cool. Then I need to switch the presenter view. Then let's go. Okay. So sometimes there are events in your life where which change your career, which change maybe even the way a company develops software. And I will talk about this today and some other things. But first, maybe, just to introduce myself very quick. My name is Carsten. I'm a backend engineer. That's why I stand behind. I'm a backend engineer here at Plan A. And yeah, I was already introduced. So let's not waste too many words on me. Let's rather talk about why I skip this. Oh, no, wait, that's okay. Plan A, of course, yeah, I needed to do that. So we are a carbon accounting company. That means we provide a software which our customers, companies, can use to track their carbon emissions and to hopefully reduce them also with our science-based targets, which we set. I'm not a marketing guy, so probably Nathan can, if you want to know more about Plan A, ask Nathan. This is the action plan, which we have as a feature. Super nice. Okay, so my talk is roughly structured in 4 parts: how it started, how it went so far, where we are now, and where we want to be. And let's just go with how it started. So for me, Corona 2020, I think, watching a lot of videos lately on YouTube, and yeah, suddenly the YouTube algorithm popped up this video from this person, Asim Hussain from the Green Software Foundation. And I was already quite interested in sustainability, but that talk basically changed my whole life. I saw that, and afterwards I realized, okay, I was never even clear how much emissions our software produce. So you never see any fumes coming out of the thing. It's clean, it's super nice. But there's a big problem. And this basically changed my life. Afterwards, I had really hard times working in e-commerce company where we were shipping goods from all over the world, mainly China. So it didn't really resonate anymore with me. Great company nevertheless, but I didn't feel well there. So I did what is probably considered today as climate quitting. And eventually I made it to Plan A. 2 years ago, I got the chance to work as a backend engineer here. And of course, yeah, I was super excited. Green tech company, surely there will be a lot of sustainable IT as well. This was actually not the case. So when we started, basically it was as in usual software companies I worked before, no sustainable software engineering at all. We were also kind of unaware of our own IT emissions. Let's say we have this, of course, we used our own tool to calculate the emissions, but this is a span-based approach, means we take the bills basically, and we get the emissions out of it. This is not very granular. So if I want to know how much this one ECS cluster maybe emits emissions, we cannot say that from this approach. And it's not suitable for optimizations because I want to see at best immediately if I change something, let's say on the infrastructure side, I want to see, yeah, what is the impact on the emissions. Also, we did not know the emissions of our customers, right? So if we don't even can really say what are our own emissions, we cannot say what are the emissions of our customers. This is a big problem. They also need this as information to, yeah, for their reporting. Of course, we can give them some values, but we wanted to know it better. Okay, so what did I do? Actually, at that time, yeah, it was time to roll up sleeves and get started. Luckily, we were a green tech company, so there were a lot of sustainability-minded people at Plan A, luckily, right? So it was easier, I guess, much easier than the e-commerce company where I worked before. And I started talking about carbon emissions after a bit, like I didn't came here after 2 weeks and said, hey guys, let's change everything. Rather go in slow and started talking about carbon emissions when we did some planning. I dropped sometimes this, okay, how about the carbon emissions of this approach? And eventually, yeah, I was also kind of getting a bit more active on social media, which is for me only LinkedIn. I don't have any other social media account. Wrote some articles in magazines about these topics. I did some conference talks about this topic and gave also some in-house session here at Plan A. And eventually we formed what we call the Green IT chapter. So these are like-minded people here in-house, which said, okay, let's meet every 2 weeks and talk about sustainability. There are also some here, David, for example. Yeah, this actually, yeah, sounded nice, right? So this is how it went so far. Eventually we became part of the sustainability initiative here at Plan A. So we are a green tech company. We not only want to, we want our customers to reduce their emissions, we also want to reduce our emissions as much as possible. Since we are a software company, it was only, yeah, natural, let's say, to add green IT also to this kind of structure, to the sustainability initiative. And this was quite cool. So gave us already quite a boost. Surely there were, if you ever plan to do this in your own company, like set this up, maybe you want to start some grassroots movement, let's say. This is what I learned from it. So there will be, of course, obstacles. Ignorance sounds always so hard, but it's just more like no people not knowing. Same as before I watched that talk from Asim, I had no idea. So when I talk to people, sometimes it was like, if we optimize our infrastructure, it has no big effect, right? So what can you do? Also management, I have to say, sometimes was a bit of a problem for good reasons. For good reasons. This is not saying just because one of the management is sitting in the back, but it was, of course, when you are a company, a startup company, you have to really take care where you put your resources into. So somebody comes and says, okay, hey, let's spend a couple of days on other topics. The rationale is, of course, clear. If we don't spend the time on improving our platform, then probably we lose customers. These customers will not decarbonize their companies. So yeah, this was a hard one to come around. And of course, the workload. We are a startup. People have a lot to do. Not saying in other companies nobody has something to do, but especially in a startup, usually the backlog, that is only growing. It's never shrinking. So it was really hard to get people also working during the sprints on it. It felt always like a bit of a blocker. What I learned from it is basically you have to be resilient. Don't give up. It took me also here quite a bit until we reached this stage here. Also be patient. This is, if we don't have one thing anymore, then it's time actually, right? So, but you cannot change people just from one day to another. This will not work. You will get pushback if you are trying it too hard. So be patient, take your time. What can you do? I kept always talking about it a little bit here and there. So keep the narrative, don't give up. And find allies, of course. We had the Green IT chapter, as I spoke already about it. And it was also very good for me that finally the co-founder Nathan approached me on this topic. And we formed kind of, how can I say, increased just the drag of the whole thing. And sometimes you have to go the extra mile. For me, because to get to, let's say, the foot in the door, what I wanted to do is to get a showcase. So I wanted to, through my research, I found that there are quite nice tools which you can use to measure emissions. So this is what I wanted to do. Let's come up with some showcase and show that actually there are emissions that we have in our IT and they're quite noticeable. But how do you measure IT emissions? So we have a web app, right? So the internet is distributed, as you hopefully all know. There are cables, data centers, people use their own devices, their own router at home, everything. So this is really hard to estimate or measure even. Of course, we had this on our website, this cool website carbon badge, which is, you probably know, these website carbon calculators where you say, okay, if you visit our website, this will emit roughly 0.45 grams of CO2. These tools are very vague. It's just it looks very precise, but it's just a rough guess in the end. That's how these tools work. I mean, how can such a tool, when they're just looking at our website, they cannot find out what's going on in the back end, right? And so I had to get a step further. This is here our infrastructure in a very simplified way. On the right-hand side, you can see the production environment. We have one production app and we have one data cluster, with how we call it. And on the left-hand side, you see the development environment, which is basically a mirror of our production environment. Less powerful, of course. And we do have something cool, which we call the review environments, which I will mention in a minute or two. Okay, so since we are on AWS, as you probably figured out from the nice images here, first thing to do was to look into the AWS customer carbon footprint tool, let's say. And I was quite surprised when we looked into it. Why is there zero emissions, right? This is something which kind of baffled me until today, because today I was on the AWS summit before this event here, and I asked somebody from AWS, and they said, look, this is just scope 1 and 2. Not sure if this greenhouse gas protocol is known to everybody, but basically they only have the emissions, the direct emissions from the energy, but they don't have any supply chain or anything in their footprint tool here. That means, since our data center is in Frankfurt, and Frankfurt is known as a green region for AWS because they buy a lot of power purchase agreements. Basically, when they do the calculations for them, it's zero emissions. So we don't see anything here. Well, that's how it works, okay? I think this is what you call carbon accounting. Not sure. Okay, so luckily there's also another tool which we call the Cloud Carbon Footprint tool. This is open source. This is a screenshot from their website, not our actual emissions. And yeah, this tool was actually, it took me a time to set it up. So this took a couple of evenings sitting there trying to connect that with our production environment, because this is what I wanted to know, of course. But eventually that worked out. And this is roughly where we are now. So I would like to show you this is how it looks like for the last 12 months. Now the cloud emissions, you see, of course, some things happening here. This obvious red arrow will show you. This roughly in, what was it, September 23. This was the time when we started our data cluster. And we had this other event here, where we basically, and I tracked this back, from the dates. Of course, you could see, okay, roughly what happened there at the time. At the time, we did have some performance problems. And what do you do when you have performance problems as a developer? You just add more resources to it. This is how you do it in the cloud, right? You don't need to make your program better, just add more resources. But you could see now this has a big impact on the emissions. So I was looking into the whole thing, and I found out that actually our cluster, the one cluster, was basically, you see here, 1% CPU utilization. It's nothing. It's just idling around. And that's not cool, because this I need to show you in the next slide. This is what we call the energy proportionality. So if you run a server on 0% or very low utilization, it still consumes quite a lot of energy, because it has to operate memory, mainboard, anything, all the fans on it, I guess. And when you increase the load, of course, the energy demand increases as well, but not as high. It's not linear. So that's the thing. So it's better to use these servers by 50% or even more. So then it's more energy efficient. Looking at our task count. So this is, we have ECS cluster there. So basically it says how many virtual machines do we have in this cluster. This is from the development environment. And you can see, wow, 15 usually. And this is the moment where I set up the auto scaling. There will be also a fun fact about this auto scaling later, but one thing after another. So I set up the auto scaling here, and you can see the task count drop on the development environment to the reasonable amount. This was quite easy to set up. Luckily, we are in the cloud, so there you can do this quite easy. Now, my idea was, how does this reflect also on the money? Because, yeah, this is what interests the management as well, right? Or this gives me more push when I can kind of monetize this approach. So we are, as I said, cloud computing. There, it's the money spent roughly indicates the carbon emissions, more or less. Yeah, it's not that easy, but let's keep it like that for the moment. And so when you reduce your utilization, your resource usage, you will also save money. That's at least my hypothesis. How much carbon will we save and how much money will we save? So let's have a look. This is now a view from the development environment after I enabled the auto scaling, and I'm not sure if you can see it well. So the blue curve is on the top, CO2 emissions, so the CO2 equivalent emissions. Then we have the yellow line, which is kilowatt hours, and costs, which is the green curve. And looking at that, I was like, this doesn't make any sense. So we reduced kilowatt hours, we reduced cost, but emissions stayed roughly like that. This really disappointed me, because I thought, okay, this is completely, it doesn't make any sense. I haven't figured out why this is yet, but on the production environment, you can see that there it worked as expected. So this was the time when I slowly reduced the task count on our system, because I didn't want to go from X to 0 or to 3 just from one day to another. So slowly reducing the count. And you can see, kilowatt hours used and cost went down, and the same way the carbon emissions went down. So for me, proven, point proven. And this was quite significant. So for this ECS cluster, it was a reduction by 75%. Wow, this is why I call a low-hanging fruit, right? And also when you compare to our whole production environment, it was still 60%. So there was something going on. Okay. I need this. I will quickly skip. This is not good. Okay. So, and now I promote this here as a green IT thing, right? I say, okay, this is so cool. We are so green. But actually, wasn't that the DevOps job? So when you think about it, I would say so. But of course, the thing is with our auto scaling on this cluster, there was just an error in the configuration, which can happen, right? So I guess we were lucky that it worked afterwards. So the cluster was, the auto scaling was basically demanding giving all the resources which you have, because it was set too low, the threshold. So I thought we need more instances, although it was actually doing good. And I'm not blaming anyone here. This is just these kind of things happen, right? I talked to a couple of other people from other companies, and they shared the same experience. This can just happen. You need people to look into this. And for us now, and why I think this is still a good success for us, it's because Green IT was, for us, the reason to optimize it. We looked into it not to say, okay, our bill is maybe a bit high. We said, okay, let's see, we have quite some emissions. Let's go. We wanted to measure this. This was also important, of course, for us. So in the end, this is what nowadays is probably called green ops. These are DevOps with a green mind. So they try to really optimize the infrastructure, optimize the setup so that they save emissions. Cool. Next steps now, during the whole finding period, there were quite some to-dos. So we can still fine-tune the auto-scaling. Means I did it very defensively, so I didn't want to risk anything. So I said, okay, let's always give it a lot of free tasks, although actually we don't need them. Network and storage is also one thing. Looking at, I haven't shared that image now. Okay, anyway, so when you look at the AWS bill, you see that, for example, CloudWatch, this is the log tool of AWS, has also quite a significant impact on our bill. So maybe we should check our logs. I know that there's quite going on something. And S3, we use S3 for quite a bit. Maybe we can optimize something there. Other optimizations like PHP server settings, we obviously use PHP in our company, and Python is also used. So there we can optimize quite some things. And one important thing is also right sizing. This is basically when you use virtual machines, like we use for our databases, or we use for our ECS cluster, or we use for our Lambda functions. Then you always say, okay, I want a certain size for that instance. And sometimes you just, maybe your size is too big. And there's something which is quite cool at AWS and other cloud providers as well, I'm sure. So you have something which they call the, what was it? AWS Cloud Compute Optimize or something. They always have these weird names. But this is basically a tool which gives you an idea. Okay, look, this one service here uses instances which have 1 CPU core and 2 gig of memory. You can downscale that to half a CPU core and keep the memory like it is, and you will save $15 for the service. Oh, well, that's something, right? I mean, it's not super high, but still, when you see it with the other services, then it accumulates. And these things here are basically our review environments, which I mentioned before. And a review environment is basically when we have a pull request on GitHub, then we can say, okay, we add a certain label to it, and automatically it will spin up an environment only for those pull requests, which is a super helpful feature. And then we can check our code there. But you know how people are. You always start such a review environment, but you never end it. And it will automatically shut down when we merge the pull request, of course. But sometimes pull requests are open for a bit longer, maybe over the weekend, and these kind of things that happens. And these machines are idling around. So could be one thing to say, let's just draw them down at the end of the day, or at night, or before the weekend, or reduce the lifetime to maybe 2 days or something. They're super easy to spin up, so why keep them alive, actually? So these are the things, once you get an idea how much these things emit, actually, then you get thinking about them. And then, of course, we have to think about our software architecture. And this was a nice example I wanted to show. Who of you knows or this is our New Relic, our monitoring tool. Who of you can recognize this pattern? What could this be? What could happen here? Any quick ideas?
Cron jobs?
Yeah, David? Yeah, exactly. So it was indeed a cron job, which ran every half an hour, basically saying, give me all the information. So it pulled the information from a data source, give me all the information. I will check if something changed in there. And this did every half an hour. The reason was, of course, at that point of time, there was no other way for the developer to achieve that because we had no event system set up. So a better approach is, of course, to say, when the data source changes, send an event to our system, and then the system can update their data. This is what we did afterwards. And the funny thing is, you can even see it here. It's super tiny because it's basically, this is the whole over-provisioned clusters. This was in February, so at this point, the cluster was fully over-provisioned. But I traced it down, and the 15th February, we shut that down. And you can even see a small decrease. It's not much, but again, it's something. And when you think about how often you have these kind of things in your applications, they sum up. And this is quite cool that we can see this now, feeling like a little bit like a detective here. Okay, where we want to be. So this is now where we are, but we won't stop here. Now we are really, anyway, super motivated. So we stopped with measuring our cloud emissions. We would like now to break them down by service, because right now I only see in the cloud carbon footprint tool, I can say, okay, my ECS, the whole ECS service has these and that emissions, but I cannot break this down by maybe, I don't know, maybe you have a different service. I cannot say this is the review environment, this is the app server, the app cluster. I can do this in AWS with using tags. So, but I need to figure out how this works with the cloud carbon footprint tool, because this is actually, it's an open source software, so it's not perfect. Yeah, I mean, I'm super grateful that this tool exists, but still it has its edges, and this is one of them. Sometimes the documentation is lacking and you have to go through the code. But anyway, this is cool. And we also want to find out about our third-party services, the emissions, like, let's say from GitHub. We use GitHub Actions a lot. So we want to know what are the emissions from these. I have actually no idea how to get these from GitHub. Maybe if somebody from you has an experience, we can share this afterwards. But this is one of the interesting things we need to find out now. Then, of course, we want to continue with optimizations, right? We just started with the infrastructure. There are some to-dos here. The architecture, we are looking into it right now. So also now, not only, but also motivated by the costs. And yeah, at some point, we would like to, of course, also share now the knowledge of how do you, or let's say, writing sustainable code or writing less energy demanding code, how to go with that. So we have some examples, or I could share some examples for example, we use Laravel in our application, what to do there. This is a PHP framework. So there are some things you can do. And we finally want to nail down the customer emissions on a really good scale. So right now we can say we have X amount of carbon emissions. But what do we do with this now? How can we say this is how much does a customer emit? I cannot say through the amount of customers, so I need to come up with something eventually. And this is where we're currently looking into it with our science team. So they are looking into some methodology, how to do that. This is quite exciting. And then hopefully, and this is a bit of my private passion here, would be to go a bit like beyond optimization, because you can do more than just optimize your infrastructure. You can also use tools that give you the carbon intensity, so let's say the dirtiness of the energy mix over the next 12 hours here. This is called energycharts.info. Really cool. It's a free tool. You can use it. It has a nice API. Basically, it says, okay, at night, not surprisingly, there's not so much sunshine. So the carbon intensity, or in this case, it's the shares of the renewables in the energy grid, but it boils down to the same. So lesser renewables in the grid at night, then of course the energy is a bit dirtier. And during the day, the energy is really is more green, because there we have more renewables there. This is called carbon awareness or carbon aware software. Basically, the idea is, use the energy when it's green. And there's some valid criticism on that, of course. So some say, oh, what if we would all do that? Every software company would do that, then the power grid would blow up. When the sun shines, then everyone wants their jobs, of course. But I think here we are like quite early, right? So nobody can really say. Also, it's quite interesting. Not sure how can we measure these things here. So when I say, okay, I don't execute the job at night, but I rather execute it during the day, what does it mean? How much carbon do I save from that? I don't know. But as I said, it's just the beginning for us. We are exploring possibilities here. And maybe at some point there will be APIs which indicate, okay, in your region, maybe it's a good, use the energy maybe at 12, I don't know, just an example. the green IT scene is moving really fast. I have since I'm more involved into that, I'm really surprised how many people are actually actively working on that. And this is here one just screenshot from our tool. We had this at one day. We thought a little bit about, okay, how can we implement this into our setup? And oh yeah, I screwed. Wait a second, back to this thing here. Ah yeah, so you all know this eco thing from your washing machine or from your dishwasher. Everybody is cool with that it will take a bit longer when you select the eco, right? Because I think it's because the water gets heated up slowly to save energy. So people know that, and you can choose. So maybe when you're in a hurry, you can use the more energy consumption mode. And when you have more time, you can choose. And this is basically what we would like, or what we are thinking about giving our customers as well. So you could say this is a normal export data screen here. What if we add, or what if we give the customers the choice to say, I will export it now, or I will export the data, maybe they don't need it right now, they can export the data at some point where the energy is greener. Ah yeah, this arrow, yeah, of course. And we could also blend in mildly the actual carbon intensity. Why not? We could do these kind of things. You see, I'm a backend developer. I'm not good in that. But I think you get the idea. All right. So when I talk to people, then sometimes I get this feedback, is it really worth it? For me, it's absolutely worth it when I just look at the latest records, which we broke here in 2023, and we in this year is also getting really good, means hot. And I think everybody has to do something. We cannot just say our emissions are too small, I don't care. I think everybody has to do their share. And it's, for me, it's also like, it's super, for a company, it's super important to do that, because we not only can reduce our emissions, of course, we can reduce costs, which is always a good benefit. I mean, why not? Less money for AWS. We can, it's a matter of transparency, right? So we as a green tech company, for example, we want to be transparent. If we cannot be transparent, then it doesn't make any sense, because we don't know really the numbers. It's also about credibility. Again, if we as a company, like a green tech company, if we don't do it, who else should do that? Then it's absolutely no sense. And it's still, we are still quite early in this field. So green IT is, as I said, the scene is really vibrant, but it's still, it feels like every day I learn something new. This is really cool. You can be still pioneers on this field. And of course, it's also employee attraction and retention. Means when you have people in your company who actively want to work on this, they want to not only do their daily job, they also want to reduce emissions during their work. That helps keeping people in the company, which is, I think, also very important. All right, so much talking. Thank you for your attention. If you have some questions, I'm happy to link on my only social media account if you want to. Otherwise, I'm happy to hear any questions. Thank you. All right, I think I can. Yeah, are there any questions? Any remarks? Yes, you young man. No, it's good.
You spoke about the narrative, sort of the obstacles that you have when trying to get moving. I think it would have made a difference if you just focused on the cost of the time. Like, instead of setting it as maybe it's a bit different because Plan A is sustainability.
Yeah.
It's a little bit biased, right? But it would just be easier to set it as a cost reduction.
Yeah, this is a good point, actually. Yeah, if you like, I think this could help definitely for other companies where you say, okay, this will save a lot of money. But yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, very good. Thank you. So the question was, would it have been easier for me maybe if I just focused from the beginning on the costs? Let's say I want to reduce costs, not emissions. So for me, the point is, yeah, I think in my previous company, it would have made a bigger impact there. But the thing is, of course, you want to frame it also as green IT. You want, how can I say, it's, as I showed, there are more things than just reduction. We can also optimize in other ways. So, of course, it would be a nice thing to get your foot in the door, let's say. and then you can afterwards show the emissions graph, right? And say, look, and by the way, we also saved so much emissions. But I'm not sure if we could then carry on with this mission, let's say, because at that point, then it's yeah, we saved money now. Thank you. Next. But yeah, good point. Yeah. Yes.
Maybe two questions. Possible.
Yeah, sure.
So first question is, where would you say is maybe the lowest as a company develop with, let's say, highest impact? Second question related directly to that, in comparison to all the actions you took, where did you see, let's say, the highest impact that you had on the activity?
Yeah. Okay. So to repeat the question, the first question was, what was basically the what is the low hanging fruit, right? What was the lowest hanging fruit exactly? So let's focus on the first question. So the lowest hanging fruit was basically, yeah, as I showed, right, this cluster misconfiguration which we had, which immediately saved us tons of money by that. And also, I guess it's also answers the second question. So what was the biggest impact which we had? So it was easy to do and it had a big impact. So I was quite lucky. So maybe also other things could be this right sizing. This is where I showed you this image, right, where you see, okay, these are the recommendations on AWS, how to right size your instances. This is also something which is very easy. Once you set this up, on AWS, you just need to opt into this tool. This is typically AWS, right? They don't give it to you without you having to opt in. Why? I don't know, but yeah, I know why they do it. But anyway, so but then once you have it, you can easily switch it in your. We have Terraform, for example. We could just say, okay, let's use for this cluster, let's use less CPU cores, and this is a matter of, I don't know, minutes, and then it's quite cool. So these, I think, with Green Ops you can achieve quite a lot, because this is really, yeah, this is for me the biggest impact, really, to start with the servers, with the infrastructure. I'm very sorry, I need to close the window here. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, I hope it will be over soon. So saving people, that's cool. Okay. Did it answer the question? Thank you. Ollie, I think you had also.
I had a question. Yeah. You talked about some of the interesting, or you mentioned there's a lot of interesting stuff going on in the green IT space.
Yeah.
And I wondered what are some of the projects that you found interesting?
Now, one of the biggest one, of course, was this cloud carbon footprint tool, which is from a company from ThoughtWorks, they're called. So they actually built it for their own purpose, and they used quite some. What I did note at that point is there are databases available, open source, basically, which give you a long list of server types with their emissions, with their watt usage. So you can say, okay. And then they made this kind of connection between when we use instance type. You know these AWS instance types, right? I don't know, M medium 5, stuff like that. Then they can relate it to the actual hardware which is underneath, and then they can calculate the watt consumption from that. This is highly fascinating, I think. But there's so much more going on. For example, the Green Software Foundation, which I mentioned this talk from Asim in the beginning. They now came up with the SCI. This is the right now, I forgot it. The software carbon indicator, I think they called it. So it's basically, the idea is now to have a unified way to say an action like an API call has XYZ carbon emissions. Yeah, this is the idea behind this SCI, to say we have a fixed usage. They call it, I think, how do they call it? Like a usage scenario or something like that. And then I can compare software to each other. So they started with MariaDB and MySQL, for example, and then they showed, okay, there are some differences between, and comparing the same usage scenario with some NoSQL database. Then you also see, okay, Maria is higher than NoSQL for the same usage. So this is also quite interesting. And if you want to know more, you can just follow me on LinkedIn. Because I sometimes, why is this not working? Okay. Yeah, so because I sometimes I like a lot of stuff on LinkedIn which is related to carbon, to this green IT, and yeah. But right from the top of my head, this is it. Yeah. surely there's more, but I forgot. It was a long day. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. So you talked a lot about like levels and how we can make like operations more efficient. I'm curious to see what do you think is the impact of code folding? So when we think of like algorithm and like when we analyze the complexity of algorithm, like compared to cleanups, do you think there's also an opportunity for us to make by building better code?
Definitely.
Also reducing emissions?
Yeah, short answer. Sorry, the question was, I didn't repeat the other question from Ollie. I'm sorry. So the question now was, how do I see the impact of optimizing the code rather than just because what I showed here was a lot of DevOps related stuff, right? So reducing, fixing the auto scaling and everything. So this, yeah, the question now with the code, I think so. Yes, because this is the next step. First, you should really try to optimize your infrastructure because this is quite easy. This is a low-hanging fruit. But then, of course, you can. This is the next stage because I can say for our PHP framework, which we use, Laravel, as I mentioned, there are ways to do. You can do things good, or you could do things bad. In the end, the result is the same. So people see, okay, I get my data from the database, but I have this in one other talk of mine. Where you can see where I compared different ways in Laravel to get data from the database, and it was sometimes from going from 1 second to 20 seconds. Just you had the same output, the same data, but the way was completely different. So definitely, there's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot you can do, but this is a bit harder now because so far it was more like a bit of a one-man show, let's say. But now I need to, and this is really, I don't know exactly how we want to do that, but we will figure that out. The idea is now how to educate, how to scale the developers, that they also start thinking, okay, now I understood, but the good thing is now I have a showcase. Now I can say, look, this is the actual emissions. When I can break it down by service, then it's even better. Then I can say, look, this is actually your code, yeah. Git blame or something. Then hopefully, then now I don't want to make it like nobody should feel bad, but it's more maybe I can get some gamification of it, like rewarding. It's rewarding when you deploy a feature and you see, suddenly it reduces the emissions. Isn't that great? For me, that's yeah. So definitely a lot of things to do, but as I said, we just started basically. All right, more questions? Maybe from the remote people, Marco?
We have nothing
Okay.
in the chat because they're waiting for us to answer questions. So.
Okay, there was another one.
What do you think are the drawbacks of and especially like probably because you're limited in the amount of libraries and so on. Any drawbacks and what
Yeah. So the question was, do I see any drawbacks on doing green IT? So because there might be it's just the amount of tools is limited at the moment, and it's maybe not so easy. So I don't see, how can I say, I don't see drawbacks first of all, because for me it's super important. It's not only about saving money; it's also about writing performance software. So I'm a very impatient person. When I load a website and it takes 3 seconds, I'm gone. I'm away because why should I? So people should rather focus more on performance again. This is what I would really like. And the interesting thing is when you focus on green IT, you automatically get performance out of it because you just make things quicker again. And the less CPU resources you use, the faster your software will be. There may be edge cases, of course, but in general, you have so many benefits. So it's not only the direct money I get from a lower AWS bill, for example. It is also like things we can hardly measure. Is a faster website? What is the effect on the customers when they visit our website and it's faster, or when our tool is faster and it doesn't give a result after, I don't know, 3 seconds, but the API endpoint returns it after 1 second. So the whole feel for the customer is better. So there are a lot of benefits. The thing is, yeah, it's a bit of a struggle sometimes. Yeah, you have a lot of people are creating their own libraries, their own tools, and this is why I'm happy that we have this Green Software Foundation. I'm not sponsored by them or anything. I'm not. not part of them, but I think it's really cool that we have some people who start building like standards for it, like this SCI standard. You might agree with the standard or not, okay, but at least it is something, yeah. And this is really cool. This is what we need, that we are not all working on our own things, but really working focused on things, because otherwise we spend a lot of time and actually electricity when I sit late at night and try to optimize my code, and then I write a little library, but then I don't share it. Then it's yeah, then it's also a waste of energy. So for me, it's clear. Green IT definitely is super important. Of course, we have to also take care that we write our actual code, right? So I cannot only focus on optimization as much as I wanted to. We have to deliver features. This is super clear, but we have to find some how you say, some sweet spot where we can do that. Okay. Yeah.
And do you have an intuition about where the low-hanging fruit is generally for green IT? So is it, you talked about running data processing at like different times, which is kind of very kind of high level. You talk about setting up your infrastructure in the right way, which is a bit low level, and then talk about optimizing your code, which is very low level. And I wonder, do you think that the biggest, where do you see the biggest potential impact?
So, okay, the question was, where do I see the biggest potential impact? Is it more on the dev, like, repeat me, correct me if I'm wrong, but is it more on the DevOps side, or is it more on the code optimization, or is it this carbon awareness? Yeah, I would really say, let's really start with green ops. This is the easiest thing, but there's so much more. With this carbon awareness, what I said, it's hard to measure the benefits from it. I cannot really say when I postpone a job to time when the energy is greener, I cannot really say how much I saved. I mean, I guess it's possible, right? You can do that. At some point, you just have to measure the intensity at the moment where the customer requests it and at the moment where you actually execute it. But then you have to really know exactly how much resources you consume for that job. So that's the hard part, I guess. So it's a super hard question. I think it also depends on it depends. Let's say it's like it's the setup, right? If you have maybe your software running on a bare metal, you cannot do the things which we do with the cloud. So there, of course, you have to concentrate on the code, or maybe make sure that your server is like utilized better, utilized higher, so that it's not idling. I had one of my previous companies. We had a server running the whole day, really. You heard always the fan from the server room, and it was just at night, it had one cron job for 5 minutes or something. And then it was idling around the whole day, basically producing and consuming energy, producing heat at the end. But it was like, yeah, we have it. We can use it for that. It's a bit electricity. And this is exactly also the thinking which I would like to promote more. Like, think about it. What a waste, actually, when you run a cron job on one machine. It's not a small recipe or something. It was really a big server. Amazing. So I think I drifted a little bit, but okay. Yeah.
So many companies are using a lot of AI tools, and that usage will increase. We in Plan A, our developers are using GitHub's Copilot AI assistant for writing code. AI is known to use a lot of energy. So can you justify the benefits that AI tools aid us in development?
So the question was, can I rationalize the use of AI, like AI tools like Copilot, in regards to their carbon emission and the benefits? And the thing is, no, I cannot. I don't know. This is a very good question, which I also ask myself a lot of times when I use Copilot, because I don't know the emissions from AI in detail. I mean, OpenAI and all these companies, they will do the heck rather than being transparent on their emissions. But you can, when you think about how expensive NVIDIA has become, you get an idea how much GPUs they will have to buy. You get an idea of how much energy this will cost. So basically, oh yeah, I think that's really hard. I made an experiment, for example, once I had a piece of code and I asked ChatGPT to optimize it like by performance. And this was quite interesting. They found quite an interesting part. So you can use tools like that also to optimize your codes. And then again, you save, but without having the measurements, you cannot really say. From a gut feeling, I would say, I'm not sure how good these models are trained for Copilot, let's say. I don't have any information about that. So good question, but we are not there yet, unfortunately. Yeah.
Do you think at some point we'll also be monitoring, trying to find like the value of how much resources we are using?
Sorry, can you rephrase that?
Do you think that we'll get to a point where we are going to monitor like how much electricity we are using?
Okay, yeah, this is a cool question. So the question was, can we get at some point the electricity consumed by our code? Like when I write code, do I see how much electricity I consume? And there are tools which make it possible. This is now I remember another tool. It's from the Green Coding Solutions company in Berlin. They have quite some cool open source tools. One of them is indeed a tool which hooks into your Docker containers, and it measures inside of your Docker containers the energy usage of the container. They do it by, I think there's some library or some CPUs can do this. The REPL, I think it's called, this technology. I wanted to look into this tool more in detail because this is highly fascinating. Would be the next step, basically. So to say, on my local machine, I get an idea of how much every container which I run on my local machine emits. And then I get an idea of when I optimize something, is it worth it or not? So yeah, this is definitely something I would like to do in the future. There are ways, but there are tools for that. And these tools are being actively developed at the moment. So there are a lot of really smart people working on these problems. That's why it's so super fascinating. All right. More questions? No? Okay. Then, no, Marco, you check the chat?
Yeah, no questions in the chat.
Goody. Okay. Yeah, another question.
Okay. At what stage do you green IT in a big general sense outside of company? What stage do you think it is in like the monitoring stage? Was it in the action stage? Was it production? Like what's what do you think?
There are some people like Anne Curry, for example. She developed a maturity matrix for the Green Software Foundation, and basically, in the end, we are all in level 1. We've just started. Basically, we reduced some emissions, we have some monitoring set up, but we are far from being really sustainable with our IT. So I don't think there are any companies who are much further in the field. Of course, there are some who are more mature than we are at the moment, but what she said was basically we are all very at the beginning of the journey. So yeah, I'm not sure if this answers the question, but yeah, okay. I figured I forgot to repeat the question. So the question was actually how in which stage are we with green IT at the moment? So are we in the monitoring phase or in the beginning phase or whatever? So that was a question. Good, sir.
Thanks for the great presentation. So the code and the green IT that you discussed doesn't live in a vacuum, right? It's designed the way that
That's
many other teams, of course. Hardware as well. Last question. So where do you think is a possible spillover of green IT in a company towards which team, and how can you go beyond subject matter?
I really think that the next close topic would be really product design. It's for me something where I also wanted to dig deeper into that. So there are quite a lot of ways. I recently checked this SASTI web. I'm not sure if you know that there's a draft for the the V3C, so this consortium for the World Wide Web, basically an approach of how to write sustainable websites or sustainable code in the internet. And they also have a whole section about just product design. So there are things like usage patterns, like they call it dark patterns. So you should avoid, of course, dark patterns like this doom scrolling, which we all do when we sit in the evening looking at our phone. This is basically this is an anti-pattern that should not be used because it's forcing people to use the application more than we should, or than it's. But of course, that's the business model, so it's hard, right? But there are a lot of people thinking about this topic. So there's also a nice book I can recommend. How's it called? I forgot. I need to look that up, but it's something about sustainability design. So that's quite cool. There's a lot of things we can do. So this would be the next level. Maybe also into what I showed, this eco mode, right? If we make it clear to the user that you have the choice, please choose if you want the a more sustainable variant or if you want the quick, because sometimes it has to be quick. That's okay. People shouldn't feel bad about that. But I think there are a lot of things we can do together with product design then, or UI, UX. There's a lot. Yeah. Damn it. More microphones. So the question was, what else? Are there any spillovers to any other sections? Like we talked about now a lot about hardware and coding and everything, but will it affect also other parts of the company or other parts of companies? If I hope this was somehow correct. Okay. I remind you. Yeah.
Can we
Okay.
maybe finish with a cheesy one?
Yeah.
So what is a piece of advice you as a promoter of sustainable IT would give to a young person just entering the tech industry?
Oh man.
And if you can repeat the question.
So what a cheesy finish for the session would be, what advice would I give to a young coder when they just start with the topic and they want to go into green IT? Yeah, the thing is basically inform yourself. There are tons of literature already. I also have on my GitHub, I have a list of green IT resources I'm happy to share, books, courses, articles, everything. So you can read into that. And if you're a bit like me, then you will find yourself in some sort of rabbit hole, because the deeper you drill, the more interesting it gets. And this is what really fascinates me about green IT, a whole new approach. So take your time, do it, and I'm sure you will. And the cool thing is you will end up with better software, because green IT makes software better. I need to patent this phrase. Okay, cool. Enough of roasting. Thank you. Cool. Thanks everyone. Also for the remote people, thank you. Thank you very much. And now I think, yeah, we will go over to the convenient part of the session. Thanks everyone, also from remote. No, there's the camera. I always look there, but there's the camera. Okay. Bye-bye. Okay.